Aurignacian Culture versus Out of Africa. This is a video about a competition between two candidates, claimed to have defined all modern humans living today. This 47,000 years ago according to the most renowned geneticists. The two candidates are A proven and factual Aurignacian culture-like event, amongst others in Europe 47,000 years ago, and B a never-proven out-of-Africa event, hypothesized by consensus in an attempt to explain the appearance of early modern humans across the world 47,000 years ago. Just for completeness, the Aurignacian culture people carried Y-DNA haplogroups C and R1b, with both haplogroups presenting plenty of scientific evidence to have had their prehistoric roots in the Americas. By the look at the distribution of R1b, even while this is today, you get a first impression that there is significantly more connection with the Atlantic Ocean and west of Gibraltar than there is with sub-Saharan Africa, as well as Asia for that matter. The high frequencies of Y-DNA R1b in Iceland, which was never connected to Eurasia, not even so during Ice Ages, the United Kingdom, and especially of its prehistoric root R1 in the Americas, are near impossible to explain with an out of Africa and only with a root in the Americas. Further, the also with the Americas associated Y-DNA haplogroup Q presents, this still so today, a reasonable association with early modern humans similar to the Aurignacian culture people, and also with the Aurignacian culture itself. We of origin for existence see the Y-DNA haplogroup Q as predating the Aurignacian culture. This Y-DNA haplogroup Q again presents a strong association with the Americas, and according to all ancestral markers clearly has its root in the Americas, and some of the more specific ancestral markers have their root more specifically in the Amazon forest in South America. For us of origin for existence haplogroup Q is not only strongly associated with the Americas, but also proven by all ancestral markers, genetics, and us of origin for existence in other videos, and clearly has its root in the Americas, and as said more specifically in the Amazon forest in South America. Further, for us of origin for existence the younger but still prehistoric haplogroup R, which provingly had its prehistoric root in the Americas, descends from haplogroup Q, something you can clearly deduce from the frequency maps and migrations of both groups. Further, if Y-DNA haplogroup Q had not had its root in the Americas, it becomes very improbable and paradigmatic that apart from its strong association with the Americas, A, it is the only Pan-American haplogroup, and accounts for almost all Native American Y chromosomes in Mesoamerica and South America. B, its primary expansion occurred into the Americas. C, it is a key genetic marker for the American continent's indigenous populations, even while in comparison insignificant numbers of the M242 mutation of a subgroup are also found in some Siberian and Central Asian groups. Event around 47,000 years ago. Further back in time to the origins, or rather ancestors, it is in fact all about the next two options. A, Sub-Saharan Africa, or B, the origin of the Aurignacian culture. Especially the early distribution of the Aurignacian culture people on the Atlantic facades including their rivers, and on the Mediterranean facades between Gibraltar and the foot of Italy, makes it seem that they had come from west of Gibraltar, and not at all from sub-Saharan Africa. Also, the distribution of Y-DNA haplogroup Q presents a degree of association with the Aurignacian culture people, but clearly more with the early modern humans in the north of Europe. It is obvious that Y-DNA haplogroup Q is most associated with the Americas, and not at all with sub-Saharan Africa, just as is the case with the to the Aurignacian culture very much associated Neanderthals. All this should sound as from onset red alarms for the consensus out of Africa hypothesis. All this also reminds us of the Atlantis of Plato, which should have been continental scale and west of Gibraltar. Regarding what is west of Gibraltar, we of origin for existence clearly are in favor of A, the probable South America or the Americas, just as we, and especially geneticists and historians amongst us, should have learned already from the for ancestrality essential ancestral markers, etc., that is if we humans really would follow science, this in relative disfavor of B, the much less probable not American Atlantis candidates, whether these are the Azores in the mid-Atlantic or Rikat in Africa, or something else in the Atlantic Ocean that has been covered by rising ocean levels and or geologic movements. These non-American Atlantis candidates are all far from continental size today, and not proven to have been of continental scale before the rising of the ocean levels with 120 meters during the Holocene, that one securely could call a significant flood. Extensions of so-called Atlantis. In fact, we have origin for existence C North America, the Azores and Chapt as logical extensions and or expansions of South America, which was the basis and origin of a global advanced culture that some interpret as Atlantis, and others as Mu, very probably also or rather dominantly carrying Y DNA haplogroup R1b and C. Probably or possibly involving groups presenting whiter skin, or at least not presenting black skin. Improbable out of Africa, 47,000 years ago. Consensus claims that the combination of the improbable out of Africa, combined with the subsequent supposed and also improbable interbreeding with Neanderthals, led to the expansion of the supposed but improbable Neanderthal fraction, and consequent introduction of this supposed Neanderthal fraction to all non-sub-Saharan modern humans. This consensus claim assumes improbable rapid expansion in the Americas, and indirectly that there were no humans in the Americas, which both are improbable. We know very well that the whole world was full of archaics, and also or especially so in the Americas, this apart from the obvious for South America typical megafauna, and many faunal ancestors. The Americas improbably carry the highest frequencies of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and of carriers of the haplotype B006, which is associated with Neanderthals, and most probably with all archaics, is improbable in the case of an out of Africa and consequently a huge paradigm. Probable out of America, to Aurignacian 47,000 years ago. For us origin for existence, the above consensus combination is the multiplying of a series of improbable events, and consequently far too improbable, exactly as some of our most renommated scientists claim over and over for years. We of origin for existence claim that one movement, more specifically the proven global expansion of early modern humans, this together with the also proven archaics, both already from onset carrying frequencies of the so-called Neanderthal fraction, in the case of the early modern humans the kind of medium Neanderthal fraction frequency typical today for all non-sub-Saharan modern humans. In our probable claim there is a. No improbable rapid expansion in the Americas at all. b. No improbable and never proven significant and surviving interbreeding with Neanderthals at all. c. No improbable out of Africa at all. d. No improbability related to the presence of the highest frequencies of Neanderthal fraction, Denisovan fraction, and of the haplotype B006 fraction, which is associated with Neanderthals, and most probably with all archaics, in the DNA of Native Americans. In other words, no improbability related to the Native Americans carrying the highest frequencies of the Neanderthal fraction, this especially so while they are furthest apart from the supposed interbreeding event with Neanderthals 47,000 years ago, that is supposed to have taken place in the Middle East, and from the Neanderthals themselves, that are assumed to have had a largely European range. e. No improbable exclusive presence of 100% recessive blood group O amongst all South American Native Americans, if they had not been the origin of all humans, and especially so if they had come at the end of the expansion line, were recent and or had known a rapid expansion. This while this exclusive presence of 100% recessive blood group O amongst all South American Native Americans, in fact is the perfect and absolute proof that South Americans are the ancestors of all humans, consequently also of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and consequently also of all humans with naturally elevated frequencies of archaic fractions, of which the 2 to 5% Neanderthal fraction amongst modern humans, including Europeans, is only one of at least 2, as will most probably will be the case with all archaics. Nowadays certain prominent scientists call consensus improbable, and that the consensus human history has no scientific argument left that is still standing, and presents an almost exponentially increasing number of paradigms. Despite all this, consensus still supports out of Africa. The assumed African Eve DNA, and the less wrong-termed mitochondrial Eve, was carried by Neanderthals, this so hundreds of thousands of years before the so-called African Eve, this also logically so since sub-Saharan Africa had no presence of Neanderthals. Consequently Africa, and especially sub-Saharan Africa, is in fact the last continent that mitochondrial Eve is connected to. Please comment with your doubts and remarks, as we pretend to complete or to remake this same video, for it to become more useful and or understandable for you and others. Also ask for more or better illustrations and/or proofs, if this need would exist. Please remember that you cannot call yourself alternative historians or historians if you do not bring history or do not bring a fully scientifically supported history without too many paradigms, like consensus still does, and most historians, even alternative historians, now do, this, at least the ones that are more notorious and that we are aware of. Thank you.